The timeline to the Spirit. Throughout our lives, we become familiar with the popular stories of the Old and New Testaments, but most of us never gain a full understanding of how it all fits together to form the bigger picture. In the Old Testament, we learn about the Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark, Abraham and Sarah, Joseph becoming Egypt's ruler, Moses and the Ten Commandments, David and Goliath, and Daniel in the lion's den. In the New Testament, we learn about the birth of Jesus, his ministry, his death on the cross, his resurrection, and the birth of the church through the coming of the Holy Spirit. But how does it all fit together in one unified whole? There is a timeline from the beginning of Genesis to the empowerment of the Holy Spirit that is important for us to grasp. That timeline helps us to see the bigger picture. The early chapters of Genesis teach us of man's fleshly and fallen nature through the stories of the Garden of Eden, the Tower of Babel, and Noah. Then God's plan to reconcile and redeem humankind begins with the calling of Abraham and Sarah. Through them and their offspring, God promises to bring forth a nation through which the entire world would be blessed. Sarah gives birth to Isaac. Isaac marries Rebekah, and she gives birth to Esau and Jacob. Although Esau is the firstborn, he does not value his firstborn privileges or God's covenant to bless the world through their family. Being fleshly, he prefers instant gratification and sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. It is through Jacob and his 12 sons that the nation of Israel is established. Through the story of Joseph, we see Jacob's 12 sons and their families move to Egypt and become numerous. Their great numbers become a threat to the Pharaoh, and so they are enslaved. Moses becomes their deliverer, and the 12 tribes become a traveling nation headed to the Promised Land. Once established in Canaan, they were led by judges. As time passed, the Israelites wanted to be ruled by kings like the nations that surrounded them. Eventually, David became their greatest king. God made a covenant with David that clarified how the world would be blessed through Israel. God told him there would come a king through his line who would establish an eternal kingdom. Through this king, the whole world would be blessed. Inner conflict erupted in Israel, which brought about a division into two kingdoms: the southern kingdom with its capital Jerusalem, and the northern kingdom with its capital Samaria. The Assyrian Empire arose and destroyed the northern kingdom. The Babylonian Empire arose and destroyed the southern kingdom. Although Israel no longer existed as a nation, Israel's prophets clung to the covenant God made with King David. They predicted that one day Israel would reform as a nation and the Messiah would come. When the Persian Empire defeated Babylon and set Israel free, they returned to Jerusalem and re-established their nation. Now the stage was set for the coming of the Messiah. End of Old Testament. The four Gospels tell the story of that Messiah, his life, teaching, death, and resurrection. Then the Holy Spirit descends on believers in the book of Acts and the church is born. That is the bigger picture, the timeline to the Spirit. The Spirit gives new birth and dwells in each believer, and the puzzle is completed. The Spirit within each believer fulfills God's plan of humankind's reconciliation and redemption. This is how the Apostle Paul puts it in Acts 8:11. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit who lives in you. The timeline to the Spirit involved many centuries and stories, but God's blessing through Israel to the entire world has been fulfilled. The very Spirit of God can now dwell in and give life to anyone who believes and receives.